The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Irene Varley, Director of Education for the Dibble Institute, and accompanying me today is Kathy Gidray, our webinar organizer. Hey, Kathy.
Hi.
You'll hear more from Kathy as she will be helping to spread your messages on to us at a different location. Today's feature webinar is The Power of a Love Story featuring Dixie Zittlow. Before we begin, though, I'd like to point out a few housekeeping tips. If you'll see on this slide in front of you is a phone number with an access code. In case you're having any audio problems, you can listen on the phone to the audio while watching the webinar slides on your computer at the same time. And we really invite you to participate, so type your questions in the questions box. I want to point that out. It's in your control panel. You see the question box? That's where we can hear from you. So if you have questions, comments, please include those in there. We also Dixie will be asking you some poll questions, and those will be answered directly on your screen. So you just direct your cursor to the answer you want to send to us, and we'll get it. This webinar is being recorded and will be archived on our website, www.dibbleinstitute.org. So that'll take about 3 days after this broadcast. Okay, so for those of you joining us for the first time today, we welcome you, and I'd like to share just a few brief words about the Dibble Institute. The Dibble Institute is a secular, national, nonprofit organization dedicated to equipping young people with the skills and knowledge they need to develop healthy romantic relationships now and for their future. Charlie Dibble, our founder, and this is a picture of Charlie and his wife Helen, was an aeronautical engineer who in his retirement years was dedicated to working with young people. In doing so, he became well aware of the emotional challenges they had for their long-term well-being. And this became most evident when in the early 90s, while attending his grandniece's wedding, he heard her say, "Oh, Uncle Charlie, this is just my first wedding." Well, this was a time that the divorce rate was reaching its peak, and this response very much concerned Charlie, because he had heard many painful stories from the youth he worked with following their own parents' relationship issues. So Charlie was concerned with the decreasing models of healthy relationships teens had to emulate. To make a long story short, Charlie quickly realized little was being done to address the development of skills needed to form successful, healthy relationships. In 1996, with the cooperation of fellow business colleagues, educators, and friends, he founded the Dibble Fund, now known as the Dibble Institute. Charlie's vision was to have accurate, unbiased, and timely research-based information available for you. We pride ourselves in remaining true to Charlie's vision and trust the research for positive outcomes for children to be growing up in households where healthy, committed relationships are modeled. This is not to say we are anti-divorce, as we also realize there are marriages that quite frankly are best to end or maybe never to have happened. As far as sexual orientation goes, and we do get quite a few questions about our stand on that, we truly believe all young people benefit from being in a healthy relationship and can learn the skills necessary to form them. Everyone benefits when healthy choices are made. Our view on cohabitation is to acknowledge that the large percentage of couples who do and will cohabitate and know relationship education teaches them that there are smarter ways to do so, to be intentional about their expectations and to recognize the stage of their relationship. So with that as our premise, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Dixie Zittlow, today.
Excuse me,
Dixie
Irene.
is the
Excuse me, Irene.
Yes.
We need to check to be sure. Dixie was having some audio problems. So if you'll introduce her, and then she's trying to get back on with us.
Oh, okay, surely. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We've had some real challenges today. It's going to be fun. As far as Dixie goes, she's our Director of Education, and she's an experienced educator of 22 years, having taught history and literature in classical education institutions for the last 14 years. She is trained and certified in numerous healthy relationship curricula and has worked with at-risk teens, providing healthy relationship education for the last 7 years. Before working for the Dibble Institute, she was a federal grant manager for a nonprofit in Wisconsin. Her speaking engagements address topics of domestic and dating violence, a way to forgiveness, learning to ask for what you want, and excavating your true self, besides, of course, healthy relationship education. Dixie was also a CASA, that's Court-Appointed Special Advocate Volunteer, advocating for neglected or abused children. Now here's the great part. We all are in awe of her. She is humbled by the education she received from her 6 children and 6 grandchildren, and she delights in being a part of their lives. And we all delight in having her on our staff. So hopefully Dixie is there. Are you there,
I
Dixie?
am. I
All right.
am. And
Great.
hopefully my audio will stay on today. So we shall see how this goes. You know how it is with electronics. We always hope and believe that everything's going to be great, and then sometimes they have a mind of their own. So welcome everyone again to the webinar today. I'm really looking forward to this. And I see that we have a real wide variety of attendees today that are with us. All of us working with teens and young adults in a variety of ways. We have attendees who are teachers, social workers, we have community youth workers, and health service providers. I'm very excited about all of that. Excuse me. We all want to help teens live these happier and more successful lives. But the challenge is using relevant and engaging tools and materials. And we know that there's a variety of resources out there that we can use. Music, videos, there's all different kinds of technology. But we can't forget, yes, the book, literature. So the 3 things that we're going to cover today are the power of love stories and how they're significant to teen relationships. Also, that stories that teach healthy relationship education give teens the power to begin or continue writing their own story. We're going to be talking about this more later also. And thirdly, research-based literature anthology, The Art of Loving Well, and how it provides evidence of the power of the love story. So the power of the love story, as we said, is significant to teen relationships. Most of us grew up with stories. Now I want you to think back to your teen life. And Kathy's going to bring up a poll question here.
I see it there, and as you can see, there's the question, did any of these love stories have an impact on your view of love relationships? And if so, which ones? And there's a selection there of Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Beauty and the Beast, Cupid and Psyche, or any other one. So please select your favorite one.
You could also type in the question box something else that isn't even on that list. It's always good to hear what there is.
How are we doing, Kathy?
I'm going to give you just a, excuse me, a few more seconds. Then I'm going to close the poll.
Well, for me, I just want to say up front here that Cinderella was one that really impacted me. the concept or the idea that one could be rescued and that there was a better life somewhere has definitely impacted me. And I've had this conversation with so many young teens, and for some reason, especially with teen moms, the idea of being rescued and that somehow it will be better.
Someday my prince will come.
Absolutely.
And Dixie, it looks like you're in good company because 56%, the majority, voted that Cinderella affected them the most. Then next would be Beauty and the Beast, 52%.
Mm-hmm. There's always great conversation to be had with fairy tales, and obviously have been for a very long time. And who can resist a really good love story? Storytelling has been the main thread through human history to pass along stories of families and morals, their religious beliefs, politics, and even culture. Stories have been used to develop the character of everything from children to nations. Stories bring us together, and they take us on adventures, and they help us to evaluate ourselves, where we are, what we think, and what we want to be. That once upon a time allows us to take a step outside of ourselves so that we can hear about life, love, and relationships. It also allows us to see ourselves in a new way, to be empathetic, sympathetic, and aware, just to be able to see how someone else handles a situation. If we go back to the ancient Greeks, we'll find stories of love, loss, triumph, and defeat. And as Irene said, I was a literature teacher from long ago, and so ancient literature was always one of my favorites. And here we have a picture of the face that launched 1,000 ships, Helen of Troy. Now, this is an amazing love story. We have a jealous husband. We have Paris, Helen's lover, who escapes with her to Troy. We have Achilles, who captures the slave girl and then falls in love with her and, of course, won't give her back. Then we have Andromache and Hector and their love story. And if you remember correctly, Hector's killed by Achilles because Paris won't go out and fight Achilles. And then we can't forget the gods and goddesses, of course, Zeus and Hera. I mean, talk about dysfunction. It reigns throughout this story. But also through this story, there's a great opportunity to talk about healthy love relationships and power that comes with it and how it can affect so many other people's lives. So literature demonstrates really this timeless idea. And moving through history, we have other love stories like Achilles and Dido, King Arthur and Guinevere, Romeo and Juliet, and we can't forget Popeye and olive oil. Whether we're talking about fate or Camelot and the ways things could be, young and forbidden love, or even adventures of a sailor and his girl, everyone is looking for love. It's what's on our minds. And our brains are wired for relationships. Stories also allow us to see situations not connected to our lives. Yet this way we can consider the parts that we relate to, view how to handle those situations. Again, we go back to Cinderella. How well did Cinderella know the prince? I remember saying this to a group of teen moms, and it was like I burst their balloon, which was kind of sad because I love the story as well. But then they got to thinking about it. And did she need rescuing? And why? Are there Cinderellas today? And what about Cinderella's family? Unfortunately, a lot of teens can relate to dysfunction in their families and the need or the desire to want to be rescued from that. This story fits very well in today's family, civil rivalry, and even the step-family situation. And this is a great fairy tale to use in discussing real life with teens because it's away from them. And as we speak of families, Families are our #1 source of stories and of a love story. Now, does this mean that our love lives will emulate our families? Not necessarily, but it's where we begin. It's where we learn the skills that affect being in a healthy or an unhealthy relationship. Just as family chaos for adults can have a negative effect on jobs, so too can unhealthy romantic relationships for teens have a negative effect on school life. Lack of attention, motivation, attention spans. They might seek comfort away from life and use self-medication even. According to research, almost 95% of teens will be involved in at least one romantic relationship by the time they graduate from high school. And conflict and relationships go hand in hand. And where there is conflict, there is pain. And a lot of conflict is experienced in unhealthy relationships. Of course, teens, like all of us, are involved in many relationships, all different types, and mixed households. At this time in their life, especially for those in early puberty, an adolescent romantic relationship is new territory for all of them, and it can be extremely confusing and stressful. Now, okay, so let's move on from here. I'm not hearing any sound, so I'm hoping I'm still being heard. Okay, good. All of a sudden, I didn't hear anything, and I thought, oh no, did my audio go down again? So, since forever, the love stories are significant to teen relationships. The second point that we want to talk about today is that stories that teach healthy relationship education give teens the power to write their own story. So, today I want to share with you one or some examples from a story that's in The Art of Loving Well, which is a Dibble resource. Now I'm going to ask you to do something a little unusual for a webinar. I'd like to invite you to stop multitasking. And yes, I've been on webinars, so I know that we all do it, okay? And I want you to relax just for a couple of minutes, and I'd like you to listen to a classic story. Now this story takes place in another time. I'd like you to listen for how the ideas are being presented and what that might look like in today's world with today's teens. And I'd like you to think about how you might help teens to relate to this story that we're going to be telling. Also, this story is going to be available for you as a PDF when the webinar is archived, so you'll be able to use it again unless you have the resource, The Art of Loving Well. This story is called Appointment with Love, and it's written by S.I. Kisher. 6 minutes to 6, said the clock over the information booth in New York's Grand Central Station. The tall young officer lifted his sunburned face, narrowed his eyes to note the exact time. His heart was pounding with a beat that shocked him. In 6 minutes he would see the woman who had filled such a special place in his life. For the past 13 months, the woman who he had never seen, yet whose written words had sustained him unfailingly. Lieutenant Bladford remembered one day in particular, the worst in fighting, when his plane had been caught in the midst of a pack of enemy planes. In one of his letters, he had confessed to her that he often felt fear, and only a few days before this battle, he had received her answer. Of course you will feel fear. All brave men do. Next time you doubt yourself, I want you to hear my voice reciting to you, Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me. He had remembered, and it had renewed his strength. Now he was going to hear her real voice. 4 minutes to 6. A girl passed close to him, and Lieutenant Bladford started. She was wearing a flower, but it was not the little red rose that they had agreed upon. Besides, this girl was only 18, and Hollis had told him that she was 30. What of it, he had answered. I'm 32. He was actually 29. His mind went back to that book that he had read in the training camp. Of human bondage, it was, and throughout the book were notes in a woman's writing. He had never believed that a woman could see into a man's heart so tenderly, so understandingly. Her name was on the bookplate, Hollis Maynell. He got hold of a New York City telephone book, and he found her address. He had written. She had answered. Next day, he had been shipped out, but they had gone on writing. For 13 months she had faithfully replied. When his letters did not arrive, she wrote anyway, and now he believed that he loved her, and she loved him. But she had refused all his pleas to send him a photograph. She had explained, if your feeling for me has any reality, what I look like won't matter. Suppose I'm beautiful. I'd always fear that you were taking a chance on just that, and that kind of love would disgust me. Suppose I'm plain, and you must admit that this is much more likely. Then I'd always be haunted that you were going on writing because you were lonely and you had no one else. No, don't ask for my picture. When you come to New York, you will see me, and then you shall make your decisions. Now, Kathy's going to put up a poll question right here. Kathy?
Okay, I've launched it. Irene, did you want to read it?
Do you think Hollis Maynell's request to not exchange photos but wait till they see each other in person was realistic? Select one of the following, yes or no, please.
And if you'd also like to write in why or why not into your question box, that would be great. Is this a relevant question or request for her to make in this day and age?
Okay, I'm going to give you all a few more seconds here.
One might wonder, too, if looks are more important today than they were in past generations. We know that if we Google somebody or do social media, go on social media, you can find just about anyone's picture. So this is a great conversation to be having with your teens.
I'm sorry, Dixie, it looks like 59% said yes and 41% said no. Dana tells us that attraction is part of romance, and she doesn't think it's unreasonable to want a picture before you meet someone. Jennifer comments, absolutely relevant even today, especially with the people who are posing as others on social media. That's a good
so
point.
This really could be a really fun research project for your teens to be doing. So we're going to go back to our story here. 1 minute to 6. He flipped the pages of the book he held, and then Lieutenant Bladford's heart leaped. A young woman was coming toward him. Her figure was long and slim. Her blonde hair lay back in curls from her delicate ears. Her eyes were blue as flowers. Her lips and chin had a firm gentleness. In her pale green suit, she was like springtime come alive. A young woman was coming toward him. He started toward her, forgetting to notice that she was wearing no rose, and as he moved, a small, provocative smile curved her lips. "Going my way, soldier?" she murmured. He made one step closer to her. Then he saw Hollis Maynell. She was standing directly behind the girl, a woman well past 40, her graying hair tucked under a work hat. She was more than plump, and her thick-ankled feet were thrust into low-heeled shoes. But she wore a red rose on her rumpled coat. The girl in the green suit was walking quickly away. Blandford felt as though he were being split in two, so keen was his desire to follow the girl, yet so deep was his longing for the woman whose spirit had truly championed and upheld his own. And there she stood. He could see that her pale, plump face was gentle and sensible, and her gray eyes had a warm twinkle. Lieutenant Blandford did not hesitate. His fingers gripped the worn copy of Human Bondage, which was to identify him to her. This would not be love, but it would be something precious, a friendship for which he had been and must be grateful. Okay, Kathy, we have another poll question here, please.
Okay, I'm launching it now. Irene, would you like to read that, please?
Okay. Well, what would you do if you were Lieutenant Blandford and saw the pale, plump face walking toward you? Would you turn around and walk the other way, greet her and make the best of it? Stomp your foot and say, "It's just my luck."
This is a great discussion to have with about character. And as you answer that, I want you to be thinking about how the teens would be answering that. What is important? And what are different ways a situation can be handled? And what are the outcomes of those different ways that it's handled? What kind of responses did we get, Kathy?
Okay, I'm sharing with you. It looks like most everyone, 96%, said they would greet her and make the best of it. Now, one person made the comment that she's a woman, so greeting her, you know, she would obviously greet her, but I guess if you're a woman, the question would be if it was a man, if you were greeting a man who was pale and plump. I didn't expect that.
Surely. Sure.
Yeah. And again, a great discussion to have with your teens. Is there a difference in what men and women would do? And if so, why? And what does that say about character? Okay, let's finish our story. He squared his shoulders, saluted, and held the book out toward the woman. Although even while he spoke, he felt bitterness in his disappointment. "I'm Lieutenant Blandford, and you, Miss Maynell? I'm so glad you could meet me. May I take you to dinner?" The woman's face broadened in a tolerant smile. "I don't know what this is all about, son," she answered. "The lady in the green suit begged me to wear this rose on my coat, and she said, if you asked me to go out with you, I should tell you she's waiting for you in the restaurant across the street. She said it was some kind of test." The end. I love the way that story ends. And so I want to ask you one last question. Even though this is the end of the story, it's kind of the beginning of the story. So Kathy's putting up our last poll question there.
Yeah, I've got it up there, Irene.
How do you think this story ends? Happily ever after? He is irritated that she tricked him, so he doesn't meet her in the end. He's irritated and decides to tell her just how he feels. And he takes the woman with the rose out to lunch anyway.
I'm going to give you a few minutes here.
There's some really good talking points in this story. And while the story takes place in another time, with a, quote, outdated ways, there's a lot of lessons to be learning here. Kathy, do we have any results?
Yes, it looks like 68% said happily ever after, and then 27% says he takes the woman with the rose out to lunch anyway. Well, I would hope happily ever after meant that he took the lady with the rose and met the younger woman in the restaurant myself.
Excellent. So there's a lot of different ways you could ask them to finish the story, or maybe we could say continue the story. We see that the close of the story is actually the beginning, as I said before, And this is an excellent way to empower teens to see that there is more to their own story, as we said before, for them to continue writing, even metaphorically speaking, their own story. A story like this can be used not just in English art classes, but at camps or group discussions at the beginning of a class or an end. There's a variety of ways that it can be used. A personal note here is way back 100 years ago when I was an English literature teacher, one of the classes I taught was medieval literature, and I love medieval literature. And I read Sir Gawain or Sir Gawain and the Green Knight to my junior and senior high students. And even to this day, when I see them or I hear from them, they remind me that they still have the green ribbon that I gave them to wear at the end of the story that showed a bond or a camaraderie and how we all fail in life, but we stand together. And it really made a huge impact on them, even classic literature like that. As we showed in point 1, literature has been used since the beginning of civilization to teach. And teens today may find some of the stories outdated that long time ago or a faraway place, but we can help them to build that bridge from the past to the present and to learn that great stories are timeless. Great stories fit into all different types of settings with or without technology and with different types of worldviews. But how mankind changes doesn't really change all that much. There's also core themes that are timeless: family, separation, loss, friendship, making decisions about the kind of person that we want to be, and maybe in spite of the circumstances or the situations we find ourselves in. They do have power to make lifetime decisions. That is really important for teens to be able to learn. You are also giving them a gift to the introduction to literature and learning that will last a lifetime for them. You are helping them to develop listening skills that they'll find useful in school, at work, and in every type of relationship that they have. We can engage youth, a variety of venues and situations, because literature teaches teens, and it teaches them to learn key concepts about relationships, a vocabulary of self-knowledge, feelings, and characters like using the word I or me, and we and us, which is not typical for everyone. They learn about friendship and love, integrity and honesty. And they learn basic and subtle communication skills, what that looks like when it's not them. Was that a good way to do it or wasn't it? Constructive ways to resolve conflict. When we go back to the story of Romeo and Juliet, this brings about a great deal of discussion about life and family and better ways to solve situations other than, unfortunately, suicide. A sense of ease with the most daunting word, love, is also something that they can learn from literature. In the book or the article, The Moral of the Story, Literature Values and American Education by S.R. Parr, an authority in the field of character education, he said that literature has the ability to break into the sense of individual isolation that so often induces moral apathy and meism. By giving students an awareness that they are part of a larger community, it assures them that they alone do not carry the burden of certain thoughts, ideas, or feelings. This is about empowerment. I want to give you a few more examples from teens and teachers and how they responded to The Art of Loving Well and how it affected them in changing their own stories. From one student who was a high school junior, they wrote, "I have learned a lot from the Loving Well program. I can now get along better with people, and I can do more things on my own. My mom and dad see the changes in me, and they're proud of me for making good changes in my life. And from an 8th grade student, I know I don't have real love now. Loving well, or the art of loving well, made me realize that. I just now realize how young I am and how I am not physically or mentally ready to do anything that demanding. Before reading The Art of Loving Well, I didn't care, and I thought, why not? But now, I'm glad I never gave in, and now I know I don't want to. I want to wait. And here's one reflection from a teacher. The Art of Loving Well is the most exciting, one of the most exciting places of discovery that I have experienced in 16 years of teaching. To me, it's been fascinating, an adventure that I could not have predicted before I started teaching this curriculum. We are
Dixie,
yes.
can I add, you know, at any conferences I've been to, almost always there's at least one teacher that comes to the table or says to me how they absolutely love this program. And it's just so neat to hear.
Yeah, yes. Thank you for sharing that. Well, we're really delighted to be able to say that this resource has also been researched and field tested. And so we're going to take a look at this anthology and how it provides evidence of the power of the love story. So here you see the cover of it, and these 3 little bubbles here demonstrate what the 3 sections are in the table of contents. The first section is early loves and losses. You'll find a variety of selections there. One of them is called Boy Meets Girl by Peter Stone and Carl Reiner. And then there's also another one called A Distant Bell by Elizabeth Enright. This section is really about going through those changes of growing up and parent-teen relationships and friendships. In section 2, they cover romance. We have 2 versions of Cinderella in here, which are great to compare and discuss. And then we have another example of a selection by Stephen Vincent Benet called Too Early Spring. Section 3, which is where our story came from today, includes Beauty and the Beast and an experience in a concentration camp by Viktor Frankl. There's 40 selections in all in The Art of Loving Well, everything from fairy tales and short stories, myths, and poems. And you'll notice that the full title of this resource and this anthology is called The Art of Loving Well, a Character Education Curriculum. Can we ever have enough resources to demonstrate or teach character? I don't think so. Where do young people get their standards in their character, like honesty and consideration for others and perseverance and integrity? Sometimes they just don't have a lot of examples, but through stories and literature in particular, they can see these examples and have an opportunity to discuss them. Now, we want to just talk a moment here too about how The Art of Loving Well got evaluated. Well, the Art of Loving Well project began in 1987 at the Boston University, and many at the School of Education were already enthusiastic about a literature-based education as a result of the Character Project, which was a curriculum previously developed and field tested under a grant from the U.S. Department of Education. In the evaluation report, based on 4 years of field testing, over 10,000 students from urban, suburban, and rural schools in Maine, Massachusetts, and South Carolina confirmed the project's success. Now, the full report can be found at this website that is listed here. And don't worry if you don't get it all copied down, because also archived with our webinar will be a resource page, and this will be one of the links that will be on there for you. So the success was demonstrated as the Art of Loving Well resource being used successfully throughout the United States. In classrooms, we also saw and see it used at Youth Build USA, in group homes, and this is just to name a few. Its subject matter also encourages coordination with all different types of departments and agencies. If we're talking about school, something other than English arts, we can see that a collaboration between science, the family consumer sciences and career development programs, and physical education and guidance. The Art of Loving Well also suggests that love and respect, trust, and sacrifice are not outdated virtues. Parents are, as well as teachers, can once again be comfortable with advocating responsible social behavior, not dogmatically, but with conviction, and not oppressively, but with sensitivity, and not even with anger, but with love. So I'm going to really ask our audience today to jump in here, and I would like everyone to consider how they might be using stories, and how this can be presented to their teens, or have they presented it to their teens. How might you empower them to write, even metaphorically speaking, and to change their stories or advance their stories? So I'd like you to go to your questions box, your chat box, and I'd like you to type in your experiences, your questions, or your suggestions. And while you're doing that, I just want to briefly go back over those 3 points that we covered today. The power of love stories is significant to teen relationships. And stories that teach healthy relationship education give teens the power to write their own story, or to continue writing their own story. Research-based literature anthology, The Art of Loving Well, is a resource that provides evidence of the power of the love story. And so I'm really excited to hear about what some of you have to say, and if you've used this or not, if you have any suggestions or questions.
You know, Dixie, I was thinking maybe it'd be good. Everyone has a raise your hand box by your name or somewhere in your control panel. Why don't we ask how many that are present today have actually used this particular curriculum in any way? Can you raise your hand if it's yes, and that will give us a better idea also about how you all can share how you're using it. You raise your hand. Looks like we have a couple here that are actually using it.
Great. I would be interested in hearing how.
Well,
in classroom or outside.
I'm sorry. One person has said that she's used children's books in child development when you're asking about different stories. And what they do is, or what she has done is discuss the moral of the story and relate it to whatever subject matter that they're talking about in the classroom. Also, Jennifer is saying that it'd be good to allow the teens to finish the stories and kind of let them see where their own beliefs are leading them to finish the stories, and then talk about what that belief is, and the discussion of, for instance, they might be completing it with a teen pregnancy. Well, you can have a discussion on teen pregnancy and the future of someone who is pregnant as a teen, or someone who decided to wait until later to have children.
And you know, that brings up that in The Art of Loving Well, after each story is short ideas of how you can incorporate discussions or other projects that are related to the story. So that's a handy tool for teachers to use with the stories.
It was one of the things that really attracted me prior to even working for the Dibble Institute when I used this and in a variety of settings, not just in classrooms, but in different types of presentations, is the types of questions that came after the stories. Really good prompters. There's vocabulary words with some of them. So you're going to find a lot of different ways of using this material.
And we do have even a resource, supplemental resource that can help teachers with that as well.
Oh, I've got a couple more great comments here. And Irene, I know you and Dixie can help. Teresa and I remember what the name of the story is she's talking about. She said, in The Art of Loving Well, she read the story from the book about the boy who impregnated the girl and what it was like for him. And she said, I think this is wonderful, she read it to parents as they were trying to empower the parents with some methods to talk about sex ed at home. And of all the things that she had done, the story had the most impact and response. Oh, I see. Someone else has said it was Ben's story.
Ben's story, right. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I think that sounds wonderful. I'm sorry, I'm having to read these along.
Well, that's okay.
There is a question here which I think is really good too. Is the supplemental resources to the book something that can be purchased along with the book? I don't know if you want to mention the activity guide.
It is. And I'm not sure how much it is. I haven't looked.
$17.50, the instructor's guide.
Yeah. And it gives a summary of the story and then also some strategies to use the story.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought yesterday during one of our discussions about this curriculum, I thought it was great that Dixie had used this before as kind of a, we think of, kids all age and families like to hear stories, and it just gives people a good feeling, I think. But I think it's the idea that, I think, Dixie, you said you had used it kind of as a calming down or bring the class together or the group together, like first thing, kind of get them out of where they've been and the aggravations of what they went through in the last class or at home or whatever, and bring them together in reading a story. So I would just think something as informal as that would be a great way to use the idea of stories.
Well, I think, go ahead, Irene.
Well, I was just going to also mention that how great to emphasize listening skills. Because it's so used to everything is being flashed at them visually and they're responding quickly. So this is, again, that calming and also just to take time to listen and get the sense of the character.
I know both of you can answer this question from Marcia, and I know we have this available on our website, Marcia, but she is asking, is this information or this curriculum, is it connected to the Common Core standards?
Well, it is authentic literature. It was not stories that were created to fit. Whoops, they were not created to fit into the book, but these were excerpts and also complete short stories that existed by authentic literature, so that it does fit into, I would think, the Common Core.
Yeah, it does.
And I know that there's a complete listing on our website if you go to this particular curriculum, and it shows exactly what classes and where it does fit into the Common Core. I looked at that earlier today.
And I posted Common Core standards for speaking and listening on that resource page that will be part of the archive.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. I've used also, I want to say, this outside of a classroom. I've used it in a classroom. One of the things I want to say is sometimes, people in group homes, or I know I've worked with runaway and homeless youth in that type of situations, more at-risk situations. We think, how do I use a resource like this? I think we forget that whether we're a teenager or adult or a small child, when someone takes the time to read to us, there is a very personal connection that comes with that. And I think the sense of being calm and hearing this, and then whether or not the person responds right away or comes back to it later and responds, they're thinking about this. They're thinking about how they connect we do that today in a very fast-paced world with movies. I love movies and with music, but this is also true of literature. And we give that gift to our children if we want to encourage them to continue reading and to really take some time and think about where they are and where they want to go. This is a great way to be able to do it. Do we have any more questions or comments, Kathy?
I think that might be it. I'm sure that we've got some more slides. I'm sure everyone is interested. We've got a great special today on these books that some might be interested in. I believe Irene is going to be getting to that for us.
Okay.
Irene?
Right, and this is a great special that if you order 10 or more copies of The Art of Loving Well, you'll receive 25% off the cover price plus free shipping. So that is a tremendous special for this webinar only. So if you order within 30 days of the airing of this webinar, you'll need to use the code ALW25 to get this special deal. And if you're just ordering one book, then you will get 10% free shipping, which is 10% off the price.
Exactly. And the cost of one book is $26.95. It's just when you order over 10, the price drops, and then you get that special 25% off.
Okay, great.
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 That hopefully will allow some of you to have small sets or large sets actually in your classroom or in your meeting place.
Well, Dixie, thank you so much for being available for this today. I certainly enjoyed listening to it, and I trust that our audience did as well. And just thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Again, you can look at our webinar, or I'm sorry, our website, and re-listen to this again or share it with others. We want you to keep in touch with us, so there are various ways to do that. And we hope that you do like us on Facebook. And we are always available for any type of consultation. You can call us. Call Kathy at the 800-695-7975 number, or you can also email us.
Irene, you might mention the
excited.
survey. I'm not sure that you did that. I heard that about the survey.
No, because I have to wait for this slide to come on. So there is going to be a brief survey after this webinar, and it just takes a few minutes. We do get ideas of what few other ideas you may want to listen to on webinars, and also how well we were in relevance to your needs. So please just take a minute to do that. And then we look forward to the November webinar and impacting future generations, implementing relationship education in community settings. And I will be doing that Wednesday, November 13th. Thanks so very much again for joining us today. It's been a pleasure being with you. We wish you all the best in your endeavors. Thank you for all that you do with preparing our youth for healthy futures. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.